Masters of Divinity. I am your moderator, JP, and I'm here as always with Father Chuck.
Father Chuck, it has been a minute since we've been on this show.
It's been a little while. A lot's happened.
What was our last episode?
Okay, Karen. Oh, we talked about the
yeah.
Okay Boomer meme and how it related to other generations.
And that whole thing just sort of crashed and died in the time, like that meme rose and fell. And in the time it's taken us to record an episode.
It has. And you know what? I have an opinion as to why that happened.
Our episode?
Well, that's probably one. That has something to do with it. My theory is that they started calling everybody a boomer.
They did, and I saw that.
Yeah, even themselves. Other Gen Zs. Is that what they call them, Gen Zs?
I don't Zoomers. And it's getting insufferable. These people.
Yeah, it's what happens. It's what happens to a meme.
Yep,
you find a good solid meme.
Just like the lady yelling at the cat.
Lady yelling at oh yeah.
That's another one that had a rise around the same time.
Mm-hmm. No, it's just, and also we kind of found out the sort of the context behind why the woman was crying so much, and it's a little problematic.
Oh, is it? I don't know.
She was actually like kind of triggered psychologically from being like abused.
Oh, so I thought it was from like Real Housewives.
It is, but like she was apparently the story behind it is apparently she was like physically abused by somebody, and then she was triggered.
Oh,
yeah. So it stopped being funny. People were just like, "Ooh!" So then they started replacing her with other things, right? To be like, "Oh, so
like Adam Driver yelling in Marriage Story."
Yeah, that's kind of funny. Speaking of Adam Driver, Matt is not here today.
So we're going to have Adam Driver is on the show.
So Adam Driver is here.
Just to crap on Rise of Skywalker.
He opted out of the press tour for Rise of Skywalker, but we got him here at Masters of Divinity.
So here's the thing. People have made a big deal out of that interview that he like walked out of because he can't stand hearing his own voice.
I feel that, man.
That's fascinating.
It is. Well, it's not his voice. He can't see himself perform. He hates watching himself perform.
So he's never been to a movie premiere?
Apparently. Well, maybe he's been to a premiere. He just never watched it. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. Like he doesn't like watch the movie. He's never watched himself. I mean,
I can't really recall ever seeing him on a red carpet before. I don't know. Maybe it's because I don't really follow red carpets, but I can't really. Has anyone ever seen Adam Driver on the red carpet? Post Adam Driver red carpet photo if you got one, because I can't.
And no photoshopping. It's got to be legit.
Yeah,
and it's got to be like a real red carpet. Don't like find like a photo of him like standing on a red carpet somewhere.
Also, it's got to be like his movie. It can't be like someone else's movie.
Does he beat the system? Does he just like not do it?
Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be really awesome.
Like Adam Driver is amazing.
He is amazing. And just spoiler alert, he is the MVP of the sequel trilogy.
I agree with you. And just so we're clear, we are going to be talking about Star Wars in this episode. We're talking about Rise of Skywalker, a little bit of The Mandalorian, I'm sure. If you had not seen either of those, there will be spoilers. So
yes,
you may not want to listen to this episode because we're just gonna throw it all out there.
Or maybe do listen to this episode so that you save money.
You know what, Chuck? If we had just walked out of Rise of Skywalker and you said that, like, hey, come on. But the further away I get from this movie, the less I like it. So yeah, we're going to be talking about Rise of Skywalker, a movie I barely remember anyway.
I remember it because my wife and I have had lengthy, in-depth discussions about this movie every day since seeing it. And I was actually trying to convince her to be on this episode.
Really? Oh, that would have been fun. Oh, that would have been cool.
She doesn't really. Her attitude's like, who cares about my opinion? Who cares about my opinion? Who cares about your? Yeah, I just do it. But
we're doing it. Yeah. Okay.
Two white guys with beards talking about Star Wars. We're so original.
Yes. This is why podcasts exist.
Right. So white men something to do.
So I guess the first thing we want to talk about is probably Rise of Skywalker, right? It's on our minds probably the most at the moment. And like I said, the further away I get from this movie, the less I like it. And also, the less I remember. Like it's that movie is a blur to me at this point.
There's a lot. There's a lot going on in that movie
There's a
that
lot going on, and there's not much
runs into
time.
each other. Yeah.
It's a short runway. You know what I mean? Like it's like it's like a plane landing on a very short runway. So Chuck, let me ask you: were you excited for this movie? Did you have high hopes, or were you tempering your expectations?
Okay, so disclaimer, so that if you're a Star Wars fanboy and you somehow found our podcast and you're listening to it for the first time and you've never listened to anything we've ever talked about in Star Wars, I'm going to give you a trigger warning, okay? Because you little snowflakes need one, and that is, JP and I both love The Last Jedi. I think, unapologetically, the best Star Wars movie. Yes, better than Empire. I think it is the best Star Wars movie. So already you're going to make one of two choices on this episode. You are either going to be on board with us, or sorry, three choices. You're either going to be on board with us. You're either going to really disagree with us, and so you will do yourself a service and just stop the episode and find something more productive to listen to with your time. Or you're going to ignore, the third option is you're going to ignore me and you're going to keep listening and just get angrier and angrier and angrier. Fine. Knock yourself out. But don't, please, just, don't go on or blow up our comments with a bunch of like Rose Tico hate. All right. I mean,
yeah, we're going to say a lot of really good things about Rose Tico on this episode.
You know now what you are getting yourself into with the Masters of Divinity. And I can speak for Matt on this as well. He has a very high opinion of The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
So,
this is a pro Rose podcast.
Yes. Yes. Pro Rose, pro Last Jedi. Everything about that movie is borderline perfect, in my opinion. So be aware of that. So I say that because I love Last Jedi so much, and I walked away from Last Jedi just thinking, man, I have no idea where they're going to take this thing. Mm-hmm. And there is, it ends with the Rey being the last Jedi of sorts. Right. You're not really left clear if she's going to be a Jedi or not. But she is a Jedi.
Something else or something.
Yeah, she's going to do something else. She can offer a new interpretation on what the Jedi are all about. You get the shot of Broomstick Boy, who is revealed to be a Force user. So there's this thing out there now. We know that there are people who can use the Force that are out in the universe. And so, it ends with this idea that maybe Rey is going to start some kind of new thing. On top of that, Kylo Ren has killed Supreme Leader Snoke and has become the Supreme Leader of the First Order. So he is basically like the Emperor. He's the big bad of everything. And so it's setting up a movie where it looks like they're just going to cut loose and let Kylo Ren be the major villain that we've kind of been, stopping, trying to figure out what he's going to be. And he's made his choice. He ends that movie clearly deciding that he does not want any kind of redemptive arc. He wants to be the bad guy. The only thing is whether or not he could convince Rey to join him. That's the real conflict that's been left at the end of that movie. And so, and on top of that, the Resistance has been reduced to a single ship, apparently.
Yeah.
It's whoever is left on the Millennium Falcon. That's it for the Resistance. Mm-hmm. And so, I had no idea. And I was so anxious about it. And then the first trailer came for Rise of Skywalker. We hear Palpatine's laugh. I thought, that's very interesting. Palpatine's back. Okay. They could do something really cool with Palpatine's return. Basically making him, he's the villain throughout all 9 of these movies. I kind of like it. Of course, I'm a sucker for stuff like the Death Star wreckage in the ocean and all that stuff we saw in the trailer. So I'm on board with what they're showing, but they're smart, not giving us any plot, any kind of anything. And I pretty much didn't watch anything else.
Oh, okay.
So I avoided a whole lot of trailers. I maybe watched one other later trailer when they, kind of the big main trailer that was out because it was running in front of a couple of movies that I saw.
Yeah, the final trailer was a big spectacle. Yeah.
But I didn't see any TV spots, except I caught one out of the corner of my eye at a restaurant once that showed a whole fleet of starships with the Millennium Falcon in front of it. And that really got my hype going. But I really, I didn't read a whole lot of articles. I didn't get involved in the rumor mill, any of that. So I preface all of this to say that, and then on top of that, I had the frustrating fact that I had to wait a week before I could see it. because it came so close to Christmas, and just with my schedule as a priest, it was not easy for me to just, go to the movies and all that. So my in-laws were in town after Christmas, and so they watched The Boys, and my wife and I went to go see it. And the only thing that I had found out was that early reactions that I saw on social media that I didn't want to see, which, by the way, also, while I'm saying this, I was reading the news app the day we went to see the movie, just Apple News. And one of the headlines was why they had to kill Ben Solo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was kind of, that was spoiled for me. But then I thought, oh, maybe it's a metaphor. Anyway, so anyway, I went and we saw the movie, and I had, a lot of hope for it. But the other thing is that I had also seen is a few early reactions of the movie. Somebody said that Last Jedi haters are going to be happy. And so I was already sort of like, ugh. And once I got over that, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go in with no expectations and just watch the movie. And I enjoyed it. It was fun. I had a good time at the theater. I didn't like the movie opened with that ridiculous "the dead speak" exclamation mark thing.
Yeah, that's
but that's corny. The whole crawl thing is corny to begin with anyway, so it was kind of a piece of that. And then it opens with this really rush montage to sort of wrench Palpatine into the story. And then then you're pretty much just taken and gone on a ride where big things happen, but they have no, characters die, but then they don't, or characters' memories are erased, but it doesn't matter, or there are no lasting consequences. The stakes are left super low, and the movie just sort of ends, not fulfilling its own premise, and it's just not good. It's just not a good movie. And I sat in the park, normally, I kind of have a glow of a movie afterward where I'm like, oh, that was pretty good. And I try to defend it, right? I try to defend it a little bit in my head. I spent weeks defending Spider-Man 3, JP, weeks before I realized it was a bad movie. I did the same for, I still do it with Tron. So me, I defend, I love bad movies, and I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. And normally, it takes a while for me to realize that they're not good. I was in the car with Kana when we were like, this movie was not good. And that's rare for me. I think the only other time that I can remember having that quick of a reaction knowing that I've seen a bad movie was 2 times. Prometheus, and which I came around on later, and Batman and Robin.
Ooh.
That was the first time I ever realized I saw a bad movie, by the way.
I think that was a lot of people's experience.
And then the prequel is also not so good. But
yeah.
But we'll talk about that. But yeah, so I could just go on a chorus of what I think is wrong with that movie, and I know we'll get to it. But that's my thing. I was excited. Some things had been spoiled for me. Some of my expectations had been shaped, even though I tried to go into it completely clean, and I walked away really. Yeah. And the thing is, there are elements in the movie that I will defend. There are some things that people have criticized that I will defend in Rise of Skywalker, but there is one, maybe 2 glaring problems with the movie that utterly ruin it for me, and I can talk about those in a bit. But yeah.
Well, then that's a great recap of the little journey you went on before and after watching the movie, and I feel like I had a somewhat similar reaction. But I was.
But you read all the spoilers and stuff, right?
I did, and you know what? I did it out of spite because I heard I stumbled. I don't know how. I forgot how. Stumbled upon one big spoiler, and it made me angry.
Which spoiler was that?
That Rey was Palpatine's granddaughter.
Oh,
it made me so mad that I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna read all of them now, and I did, and sort of, and my philosophy about reading, I read leaks. All right, leaks aren't the same as finding the script and reading it all the way through. Leaks,
which apparently you almost could have.
I guess, yeah, I could have. Now, in retrospect.
John Boyega, but anyway.
Oh yeah, I heard about that, the whole eBay thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. In retrospect, yeah, I actually probably could have. I was always kind of skeptical of these sort of bullet point leaks because I had read a bunch for Game of Thrones, and I read a few that ruined my day, but they didn't happen. Mm-hmm. One of them was Tyrion dying, and I was like, "You're really gonna do that?" You're gonna kill off Tyrion in the last episode of Game of Thrones? That like made me hate the whole show. Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot Chuck's not a big Game of Thrones fan.
I've never watched it, so I just have nothing to say about it. I'm not anti.
Well,
seen it.
Tyrion's like one of my all-time favorite characters on television. And when I found out, like when I had heard they were going to kill him off in the last episode, it just to me it just sort of registered as like mean, you know,
right?
Like a personal attack. So I was kind of distrustful for leaks. So I was like, maybe most of these probably aren't even true anyway. So I read them. They're all true. But at the same time, it's also like when you just read like bullet points, it doesn't really kind of put much in perspective. Like you need kind of context. It's like,
right.
I'm probably gonna forget most of these anyway because you just said like this happens and that happens, whatever. And I didn't forget most of them, except for Palpatine being Rey's grandfather, which I can't even begin to talk about how much I hate that, Chuck. But I went into this like, you know what? Maybe those bullet points weren't true. I'm gonna brace myself for the worst. I now know like the worst things, and I can just like let it speak for itself. You know, I'm not like a big. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not, but mostly not like big on like avoiding everything about a movie because it's just not where my enjoyment comes from the most when it comes to watching films. And I kind of feel like it lets you sort of allow the movie to kind of speak for itself. So, but that's just my opinion. And the movie did speak for itself. It didn't, and it turned out it didn't really have much to say. Something about family, a friend could be a family. I don't know. It's the usual J.J. Abrams thing he says. There were some people who had like these cockamamie theories that J.J. Abrams was going to employ time travel because the only thing he's ever actually ended was Felicity, and the last season of Felicity deals a lot with time travel. And so people were kind of connecting those dots, and I was like, that'd be kind of funny if that happens. Didn't happen. A little disappointed. Kerry Russell was in it though.
Wait. You're actually disappointed? I feel like the worst thing, the only thing that could have done worse to that movie is if they had added time travel to it.
It just depends on how they would have done it. I would have liked to seen that more than what I saw in the theaters.
Okay, I actually would rather have seen whatever Colin Trevorrow could have come up with than what I saw in theater.
Oh, dude, I am totally Team Trevorrow's script right now. I want to read it. I want to read it. I don't know if they would have made a good movie, but if there's anyone out there who's listening and they may have it, just leave a comment. JP wants to read it. So how's he feeling going in? I was willing to give it a benefit of the doubt, even though I knew I saw all the red flags, I saw all the warning signs, and I did enjoy it for the most part. And I was started to kind of remind me of Star Trek Into Darkness. I did not feel like I was going to be ultimately rewarded, and I don't think I was rewarded for my faith and for putting faith in J.J. Abrams. That probably sounds really harsh, but that's just how I feel. So no, I didn't love it. There might be things in retrospect that I might like, much like Star Trek Into Darkness. Do you know what I really like about Star Trek Into Darkness, Chuck?
Nothing.
No.
Oh, sorry. Marcus's ship, the Dreadnought, is awesome.
That's what I was going to say. What's his face? RoboCop. What's his name? Peter Welling.
Yeah.
Peter Welling is a blast in that movie. He's chewing up so much scenery. It is so much fun to watch him interact with everybody else. It's a blast. And I feel like maybe that's what I'll see in retrospect. You know, like there may be some moments I can relive and watch on YouTube. I'm like, that was fun. That was cool. But I got to say, you know, when The Last Jedi came out, I didn't really get to, it was you, Patrick, and Matt who reviewed it on the podcast, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't there because I didn't have internet access at the time.
That's right.
So I didn't get to establish that JP is an enormous Last Jedi fan. And it's not my favorite one. I still love the original Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back more. But I think it's the best Star Wars movie since then. And it belongs in that league. And it really affected me. I love all the characters. I love Rose. A character I love who was completely discarded. There's so much meaning in The Last Jedi, right? Every choice, every beat, everything has a setup and a consequence. and that's just not present in this movie. It's like we gotta go, we gotta go, we gotta go. We got to go to A, from B to A to B again, and like this character died. No, they didn't. They're over here, and it's like you're just trying to mix up my emotions. You know, you're trying to just give me the feels, and like the whole Chewbacca thing. He died, but not really. I didn't care during either event. I didn't care that he died. I didn't care that he like survived, because at first I thought the way he died was super silly, and then when he brought back, it was like also kind of silly.
Oh, there was another ship. Oh.
Yeah, I don't remember there being another ship, but okay, whatever. And I think the worst thing about this movie, Chuck, the one glaring thing that like I can't forgive them, Carrie Fisher. I thought it was done horribly. Watching Rey interact with her reminded me so much of the episode of South Park where Chef came back.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And they just kind of like copy and paste a bunch of dialogue that doesn't really go together. Because she kept saying things, and it's like, is she senile? Is that what's going on? Like, and Ray's always like, Ray always kind of looks a little puzzled, like, yeah, that's how I feel. Why don't you just give me a straight answer, woman? Like, you're Leia, you shoot us straight. Like, you're not Yoda. And I don't know. I just felt like it was more of a disservice to Carrie Fisher than a tribute. And I feel like I've seen better. Like I feel like Tarkin was probably handled better in Rogue One than Carrie Fisher was handled in this one. I kind of feel like they should have just left her out completely. You know, gosh, I don't know. There's so many other things I could get into, but I'll just say that I don't think super highly of it.
Here's the thing that got me. And this is what Kana and I immediately realized was the huge flaw in the movie. So they go to Burning Man in space. And in the midst of Burning Man, they fall into like quicksand that they're finding like a perfectly preserved Jedi ship that's apparently like 50 years old or something, or I guess 20 years old or whatever. And it's just chilling. And also apparently Luke just like abandoned Lando on this desert planet at some point, because they don't really explain. Like Lando just sort of shows up and he just happens to be there. Either like Lando just really likes Galactic Party and that's why he's there, but he's in disguise and he just happens upon Rey and everybody. And he says, "Oh, Luke, I was helping Luke find this like Jedi relic on this planet." And then Luke isn't there. So did Luke abandon Lando?
Oh, I thought they had gone on like some other adventure in the past and they gave up on it. And like,
so Lando just decided like hang out on a desert planet for no reason? Or did he just really like the party? He just wanted to go to the big party? I guess he wanted to go to the big party.
I thought maybe he was tracking the Falcon. I don't know.
Oh,
but you're right. They don't explain it. Like he just happens to be there. But
which, by the way, don't get me wrong. I was very excited to see Billy D. Williams in the movie. I liked having Lando back. He was definite highlight of the movie. All Absolutely. Right, it was great to have Lando back. Good decision, JJ, to have Lando back and do something with him. Thank you. And to have him in the Falcon again. Awesome. His co-pilot could have been Neon Numb, but that's okay.
That would have been cool.
His gunner was Wedge. I'm okay. That's a couple little fan servicey things I can hand.
5 seconds of screen time, but yeah.
I know. Even though, I mean, Wedge has never been in that gunner position. I guess he was too old to fly an X-Wing. I don't know. But
X-Wing suit. Man.
Yeah. Anyway, so no, the biggest glaring issue with the movie for me and for Kana was that, okay, so they go to Burning Man, they fall in the hole, and when they fall in the hole, they're in the caves, and in the caves, so they have some great character interaction, by the way. They're in the caves, they come across this snake, and this giant snake thing tries to eat them, and it's all pissed off. And Rey is like, hold on, let me try something. And she goes, and she uses the Force to heal the snake, which, of course, this is a new Force ability that you only know of because you've seen Baby Yodito do it in The Mandalorian, if you've been watching The Mandalorian.
Right.
So she uses the Force to heal the snake. And what does that healing do to the snake? The snake becomes kind.
Yeah.
And it leaves them. Fast forward. They're in the wreckage of the Death Star. Kylo Ren and her are fighting. She kills Kylo Ren. Or at least mortally wounds him. She mortally wounds Kylo Ren.
See, that's a part we need to talk about because there's been a lot of people don't really understand what's going on there.
Yeah, she mortally wounds Kylo Ren. So, like, he's gonna die. But then she realizes, oh, wait, he was talking to his mother, and she feels sort of bad that she took advantage of that moment to deliver the blow. And so she uses the Force to heal him again. And what happens to Kylo Ren after she heals him?
Becomes good.
He changes.
Yeah.
He kind of realizes, hey, there's something else going on, whatever. So he has this moment, and then he has the vision of his dad, and it really pissed me off because it should have been Anakin Skywalker, but I'll get to that in a moment. Anyway, so he has this change of heart. He changes. He becomes a good guy after being healed by Rey. So now we've got two moments in the movie where Rey is demonstrating a new force power that clearly has the power to change behavior of people. Add to that, there's this moment when Finn finds the other deserter stormtroopers, and it turns out this big reveal, the First Order has been rounding up force-sensitive kids and forcing them to be stormtroopers. Okay, that's cool. Something's going on there. Do nothing with it, but it's there. So clearly, and they said, we just had this moment where we realized, hey, what we were doing was wrong. We put down our guns and we walked away. Okay, so you've got some theme. You're setting it up. So then Rey has an encounter with the Emperor. The Emperor is decrepit. He is hooked up to machinery. He is on the verge of dying. And Rey kills him exactly the same way that Wonder Woman defeats Ares in the Wonder Woman movie. They set it up that she could heal him, and that the healing him would have some kind of fundamental change in what's going on in everything around her. She could have healed him, and in the process of healing him, it could have sent some kind of shockwave through the Force. And the First Order, all of them realize, hey, wait a minute, something's wrong. The Force has made us realize that we have like consciences and stuff. And so they like lay down their weapons exactly as Finn indicated that, so this idea, the Force had awakened, it was the title of a movie, the Force Awakens, it awakened in people trying to change their hearts. And instead of killing the dude, you heal him, and ultimately you have a story of the triumph that happens through conversion, wholeness, restoration, and not violence and death and defeat. That is my problem with the Rise of Skywalker. It was on the table and they left it.
Well, it's also the way that The Last Jedi ended, right? With Rose literally saying, that's how we're going to win. Not by destroying what we hate, but saving what we love. And that's how Luke saves the rebellion.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know about like healing Palpatine, whatever.
He killed him, and maybe all those like Sith acolytes kill him because he's not a Sith anymore. I don't know, but you could have done something that should have healed him. Especially it would be poetic, right? Revenge of the Sith. There's like a whole thing about the fact that he uses the Force lightning against Mace Windu, and it scars his body, and he gets up in front of the Senate, makes this whole thing about like, these powers have scarred me, blah, 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 blah. Right, so you've already got a theme that his injury is a thing for him. Mm-hmm. You heal him, and it kind of makes that moment in Revenge of the Sith better. It was on the table. That's what makes me so mad. And this is what Kana and I have talked about every single day since seeing the movie, is that, and this is what frustrates us both about Rise of Skywalker. I think she thinks movies better than I do, but is that it's ultimately a profoundly disappointing movie because it's just blown opportunities. And it's so clear they're there. They're like right in front. Like how is it that movie could be made, with the budget that it has and all the eyes looking at it and people not to see like, hey, wait a minute, like you're totally setting it up that Rey's like going to heal this guy.
Well, I think it just kind of goes back to process. And, there have been some, there's like this big interview with Chris Terrio recently, right? Where he just kind of spills his guts on on a lot of questions people have about certain story beats. Mm-hmm. And he even reveals the process of how they wrote the screenplay. And that process is kind of, I don't think that's what Rian Johnson did. That's all I'm going to say. They were like thinking of things like, we need to have this moment. We need to have that moment. We need to, somebody mentioned this in a movie, so we should address that.
We got to give Chewie a medal.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I audibly laughed when that happened, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I thought it was charming, but like as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, okay. But like I said, it's process. It's the talent behind what's being done. And Chris Terrio, who's the screenwriter, he's not a strong writer in my opinion. Not a very literary writer. Very studio mandated,
Mm-hmm.
connect these dots, get me here, get me there. You know, you have someone like Ryan Johnson, who comes from a background of independent filmmaking, who is obsessed with, crime novels and mystery and fiction, and drama, lots of drama and theme.
Right.
I mean, little sidebar for a second. Can you sort of articulate what the major themes in Rise of Skywalker were, and like how they were delivered in this movie? Because I can't really. It's a little muddled.
I think the only theme in that movie was
The whole family thing. That's
well. I think the theme, no, but I think the theme is really J.J. Abrams, like just mad that he didn't make all three movies, and tried to try to cram his version of 8 and 9 into one movie.
Yeah. Well, can I just say, like, one thing that really upsets me about all of this, and that you're saying, like, it's like a list of missed opportunities. I think the one big missed opportunity is you, J.J. Abrams, created some very amazing characters in The Force Awakens. Rey, Finn, Poe, Kylo Ren. And you would think that, like, okay, I'm back. Now let me just play with these guys and just cut out all the riffraff, right? Like, let's see how far we can push these characters. What are their boundaries? Where can I take them? Well, Rose wasn't his creation, but she should have been with them. And it's like, to me, just like you have the Millennium Falcon, you have these cool new characters, like cool new toys, and you get to put them in there and just send them on an adventure. But it's like you sort of, they burden themselves with this idea that it has to wrap up 9 movies, which A, kind of impossible. B, seems like it was probably mandated by Bob Iger. Because I think there was probably a moment where the future Star Wars was sort of like in question, because they were so upset with how Solo performed, which is kind of baffling because it did pretty well.
Right.
I don't love it. Critics didn't love it, but I don't think it did so poorly that, oh God, we got to rethink our whole structure.
It's a better movie than Rise of Skywalker.
Whatever. I mean, sure, whatever.
It is. There's no debate about that.
I find Solo to be very dull. I can't really get into it. Like, for me, it doesn't really take off. That's just my opinion. But I'll say, but that's to me, that's the big missed opportunity, and that's kind of what I was expecting since we started this whole thing. Like, I thought this whole thing was to pass the torch, right? Like, that's the language everyone kept using during the first movie. That these are new characters, are going to go into the future Star Wars, and they're going to open up the galaxy by the time this is over. Not close it all off, not wrap up a bunch of things that have already been wrapped up. Like, you can't put any more wrapping on that.
Well, and that's the thing is, Last Jedi wrapped it up.
Well, and that's you're right. It did, but it also put. I mean, I think Ryan Johnson did J.J. Abrams a really big service by giving him a clean slate for this movie.
Yeah.
Super clean slate. Do whatever you want now. Like, you don't really have that much baggage. I mean, you may have to address some things like what is Rey's new approach to the Jedi going to be? Now that we've established that, okay, the Jedi Order sucked. And we have to kind of learn from that. So what's it going to be? Not addressed at all in this movie. As far as J.J. Abrams is concerned, the Jedi were fine, right? I don't know.
Right, which is right back to Jedi versus Sith, which is and that's the thing is that I actually really like that Last Jedi is a movie that's about Luke feeling so profoundly guilty about the fact that he is allowing the same cycle to repeat itself in him. That this moment where he thinks about killing his nephew, that he's so overcome with guilt for even having that flash of a thought, because he's so caught up in that fear of the same story playing out over and over again, that he decides he's going to go back to Ahch-To, to the original Jedi Temple, and he's going to hide out there until he dies. He just let the Order die with him in the hope that somebody will do something new. And then Rey shows up and she ends up taking the original Jedi texts with her, and then apparently also Luke's journal, I guess, because they use that in Rise of Skywalker. But she takes the original Jedi texts and like basically sets up this idea that, and Yoda and all that set this idea that she now can read these with fresh eyes. She doesn't have the baggage of centuries of expectation on her. Because even Luke, he's got this pressure from Yoda and Obi-Wan and all these people to sort of reignite this old thing. But Luke ultimately realizes the whole thing was flawed to begin with, because he realized that by the end, right, Darth Sidious came up because the Jedi were so vain they couldn't see past their own problems. And so he's saying we need to do something new. So the movie, you're right, the movie totally sets up the idea that Rey can do something completely different. On top of that, Rogue One opens up this whole range of other Force worshipers.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All those pilgrims on Jedha and all the different characters and their different approaches to the Force, like you've opened up this whole new door of like a whole new way of doing things, and it still could involve lightsabers, right? Like there's no one saying that it can't be that, but it could be, that if the idea was about finding balance, it's about learning to embrace the light and the dark, because light and dark are morally neutral concepts.
Yeah.
In and of themselves.
And I think what's really interesting
is how you use them that makes them, good or bad. And so
and one thing, I pointed this out to you and Matt. I brought this up with you and Matt on our messenger thing. One thing I think is really interesting that's been really explored in the Star Wars universe since Disney picked it up is that it's not that the Star Wars universe itself is black and white. It's just this core story that the universe hinges on is black and white. Right. But the rest of the universe is basically just like the real world. It's there's a lot of in between. Rogue One, there's a lot of gray characters in Rogue One, a lot of gray characters in Solo. You have characters like Kylo Ren who just they're just not comfortable in this black and white dichotomy, and it brings nothing but conflict to them. You could have explored that a little bit more, I guess, especially with Kylo Ren's character.
How J.J. Abrams handled all this reminds me of how when I was a kid, how me and my friend Scott would play with Jurassic Park toys.
Yeah.
So when Jurassic Park came out, we had a bunch of Jurassic Park toys and we played Jurassic Park, and I realized for me, the way that I played with Jurassic Park was in my head, I reenacted the Jurassic Park movie, just where different dinosaurs were sort of the main dinosaurs. Okay. So instead of a beat for beat recreation of the movie, it would be instead of the velociraptors chasing the kids, it's the Dilophosaurus and things like that. Maybe a Spinosaurus attacks instead of the T-Rex or whatever. But it was the same basic, the way I play with it. Every time I play with it, it was basically the same storyline of the movie. I was just reenacting the movie, just rearranging, just remixing the characters in the in the pieces. And I feel like that's what J.J. Abrams did with this movie. Mm-hmm. And even kind of Force Awakens, he just sort of took the rough skeleton of A New Hope and just sort of put some new characters in doing the same things. I mean, let's think about what we know now in Rise of Skywalker. What was the point of Starkiller Base?
To be a
why go through But why go through the trouble? No, think about it from an in-universe standpoint.
Okay.
Palpatine is running the show really from the background. He's created this clone thing called Snoke that it's basically him, that it's like an avatar of him working through whatever. This is garbage. But anyway, this is what he's doing. And he and which, by the way, I started watching Clone Wars, and there's a character who's he's like Count Dooku's apprentice. She's like a night sister or something. I don't know what she is.
Asajj Ventress.
Yeah.
She's cool.
Yeah, she is cool. And they call her Supreme Leader in the first episode of the Clone Wars. And there's no reason Snoke couldn't be the same species as her. Anyway, there's already a connection that they could have made with. Anyway, so Snoke is so Palpatine's actually the one really running the First Order. So he has them build Starkiller Base. All the while, he apparently has a fleet of Star Destroyers that have planet-killing weapons in them. Why go through the trouble of reformatting an entire planet in order, in demonstrating that in order to destroy planets, you need a massive energy source. And ostensibly, the only reason they build Starkiller Base is because they are out of kyber crystals in order to use on the Death Star to do something like the Death Star again. So they have to create this planet that draws its energy from a sun. It leeches energy from a star in order to destroy multiple planets at once. Okay, cool weapon. But the whole time Palpatine's got this fleet of Star Destroyers that can do it. Like, why is he hanging out in the background?
I mean, wasn't Starkiller Base Hux's idea? Like, isn't that his baby? Like,
I don't know, maybe.
I think Snoke mentions that in The Last Jedi. And then said he like kind of called him a failure because Starkiller Base is a failure.
Oh, I guess. But okay, all right. So, all right, whatever.
Not that there's any cohesion anyway, but
I know, but like, Palpatine's inclusion is the biggest problem, but the thing is that it's not inherently a bad idea. I just want to lay that out. It's not a bad idea because it adds, George Lucas' whole thing. It's poetic, right? So the idea that the reveal that Palpatine has been the villain through all of these movies is great. And on top of that, I've been watching the prequels with my kids, and they set up this idea that Palpatine has a plan, that he's got this very long-term vision plan going on. And so if you have it where he understands that Vader turning was just a bump in the road in his long-term plans or whatever, like that totally can work. The ground has been laid. It's just a close reading of the previous movies, and you could work something out of this. So if you're going to include Palpatine, it's not inherently a bad idea. Just give it some friggin' thought.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's talk about Palpatine for a second. How do you feel about him being Rey's grandfather?
It's useless.
Yeah, I know. It's meaningless, right? Like, when they reveal it, who cares? Like, Rian Johnson, and you're going to hear this a lot, folks. Apologies in advance. Rian Johnson, he had very specific reasons why he wanted Rey to be from nobody, from nowhere, right? Much like there are very specific reasons behind making Darth Vader Luke Skywalker's father, and why they were revealed at those moments. Those were the lowest moments at the time. It's like the one thing Rey cannot hear. Same thing with Luke. He just lost his hand, basically lost a fight with Vader. When it's revealed that Palpatine is your grandfather, man, I don't even remember what point of the story it was. At what point of the narrative it was when it's revealed to her. Was it Ben that reveals it to her?
Yeah. And it's during it's during one of their little Force conversations. I think it's while they're having that fight where she's like on his ship.
Yeah. They're fighting through the Force.
Which is cool, by the way.
I think it is cool, but I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but someone pointed out that like the reason why that power was introduced in The Last Jedi was because Rian Johnson thought that every time these two are together, they're just going to fight each other. I needed them to actually just talk to each other. So he came up with that sort of ability to do that. And J.J. Abrams uses it, and they fight through it.
Yeah, I know, I agree. But at the same time, I also don't feel like I feel it's an effective. It builds on what we've seen, right? Because like
it's
material
cool
does pass through in Last Jedi, so the idea that it can be exploited and it gives us one of the cool scenes. It does give us one of the cool things in the movie is when she manages to use it to pass the Solo lightsaber, Anakin and Luke's lightsaber to him in the final thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool deal, even though there's been like all this hype about the Knights of Ren and
talk about another letdown, man.
Cannon fodder.
I wanted to see like what Kylo Ren's posse was going to be like. Like I've been looking forward to that for a while.
Are they supposed to be Jedi?
I thought so too. Like I thought they all had lightsabers. I don't know.
The whole thing, right? The whole thing, especially what we see in Last Jedi, is they clearly set up the idea that the Knights of Ren are the Jedi, are the apprentices, like the students that didn't die, and he takes with him and he corrupts them.
Yeah, that's why I thought so too. But they're just just a couple of thugs, like just a few thugs.
It's basically Boba Fett times 9, right? I mean, it's just a cool costume completely wasted.
It's no different from the Praetorian Guards in The Last Jedi.
Right.
which everyone thought who were the Knights of Ren, which I thought was kind of funny. But I was like, no, that they have a name. Yeah, so they kind of got reduced to that, basically just more stormtrooper nonsense.
No, the thing is, just like, okay, and this is the other thing that gets me. It's like, I think I said this to you a couple times already. Is what I don't understand is it's a movie where it feels like I was watching the rough draft of the script being filmed. Like just one or two more eyes looking at it, I feel like could have changed it. Like some key things. Like for instance, again, you've got a storyline revealing the idea that the First Order is rounding up Force-sensitive kids and forcing them to be your soldiers. That's a cool idea. You want Palpatine to be your villain? Cool. Palpatine's basically make Palpatine Herod. He is trying to take these kids out of the equation so that they are not a threat to his power. So he knows where every Force user is located. They are in his ranks, and he has them under control, brainwashed, whatever. So that basically Palpatine wants to be the only Force person in the galaxy. He wants a monopoly on the use of the Force. Cool. That's a cool idea. That's something you could do. You could do with that. Rey is clearly a Force sensitive child, and you don't need her to be Palpatine's. You don't need her to be Palpatine's granddaughter in order for that story to work. It could, the idea that she's just a Force-sensitive kid that was being hidden away because the parents were scared the First Order were going to take her. They've caught word that Force-sensitive children, steal, or maybe it's the, I don't know, maybe they're like related to another Jedi and they know that that there's like Force strength is in their lineage. And so that's just out of concern that she might be being targeted. And so they hide her away. The thing is, her being Palpatine's granddaughter, like you said, it means nothing. And even the reveal has no weight or power to it. It's just, here's a fact about you.
Mm-hmm.
And I
have a theory, Chuck. I think I know why, ultimately, Palpatine ends up being Rey's grandfather. And why they felt the need to close that loop. I don't know if it was, Abrams was like super adamant about it or whatever, but I could see it coming from on high. Because I heard this interesting factoid about Kathleen Kennedy. Apparently she had a meeting with George Lucas. It was back when Disney had just bought Lucasfilm and they wanted to make her the head of Lucasfilm. And she had a meeting with George Lucas because she was like, to be honest, I really don't know why people love Star Wars so much. Like, what is the magic behind Star Wars that makes it work so well with audiences? Because I don't know what it is. And Lucas told her, "Well, I'll teach you about it." And so they had this meeting, and he tells her all this stuff about the Joseph Campbell story, the monomyth, the hero's journey. Yeah. He goes through all the storytelling. He's like the whole point is storytelling, the whole cyclical storytelling thing. And she's like, "I don't think that's it. Because we've all tried replicating that, and we still can't do anything as big as Star Wars. We've all tried doing it." She's like, there has to be more to it than that. And he's like, no, that's all it is. It's just storytelling. It's the story cycle. It's the monomyth. Blah 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 blah. And she's like, "George, just tell me, what were you going through at the time when you were fantasizing about Star Wars? When you were creating Star Wars, where were you emotionally? Where were you mentally?" And he's like, "Well, my father wanted me to take over the hardware store. And I remember thinking, that sounds awful. Like, I cannot see myself spending the rest of my life in this, just running a hardware store. Like, that's just like a dead-end life to me." And she's like, "That's it. That's what Star Wars is. Star Wars is not becoming your parents." And, you probably could have just run with that with the fact that Rey's parents were a couple of drunks.
Yeah.
But no, it's like, because we have to connect everything, and because, we have to make it the big bad actually bad, like super evil. You don't want to become the super evil person, so it's really easy to make that choice. Make it Palpatine her grandfather. Which, by the way, we're starting to run out of time. I don't want to spend this whole episode just trashing Rise of Skywalker, but I do want to bring up this one thing. Okay, I think one of the worst lines in the movie is, they sold you to protect you.
Right.
That's a little weird. Okay, if your child is the offspring, the grand offspring or whatever of Palpatine, you don't sell it to some. You don't sell your child to some criminal on some backwater planet, do you? Or do you like maybe take it to the Resistance, I guess? Or I don't know. I just kind of feel
the Republic. It would have been the Republic at that time.
Yeah, like I feel like maybe you would probably trust the New Republic, but
maybe
no.
even Luke.
Yeah, so I just kind of that too. But I just kind of feel like it's really strange to conflate this. Like, okay, well, they had to protect her somehow, but also they were awful. So they sold her into slavery to protect her.
I thought Ren said that they wanted her to believe that they were drunks. Like they really passed themselves off as that, and they really weren't bad people.
I have no idea. I don't remember.
Yeah, he says
like
that.
I said, this movie is such a blur to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that. I mean, it's still weird.
But this is the thing. But Kathleen Kennedy is right, and I've heard some scuttlebutt around that Iger inserted himself into the process of this movie at some point, and that
I heard that too.
Lucasfilm are like big. They're really behind Last Jedi and think it's an excellent movie. But Iger didn't like the negative.
I heard that too.
And about that.
That Iger hates The Last Jedi. Like that's like the big rumor, right? Like,
which I don't know if I buy it, because like that movie didn't just like sort of fall out of Rian Johnson's mind without the story group and like all these people. But maybe I don't know. Maybe
$2 billion.
I know. But it's but the scuttlebutt is that. But what's interesting is if that's the case, because you can see both in Force Awakens and in The Last Jedi that what both those films are dealing with is the same issue that Kathleen Kennedy said. It's about not wanting to be your parents, and it's about those. Force Awakens and Last Jedi set up the storyline to basically be about the millennial and Gen Z looking at the failures of the boomers.
Yeah, that's a good interpretation of it.
Right? Because, I mean, you think about it, right? There's a boomer generation that, Mark Hamill and all them are the boomer generation, and they are total stand-ins for all this, like, revolutionary stuff that was going on in the 60s and 70s, and they, they got into power, and then they and now they're, they sort of, what do they do now?
Yeah.
And so, and also on top of that, they sort of, sometimes don't necessarily pay attention to the areas where they didn't do so well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Another thing about it is it's so unfortunate. Carrie Fisher's death, I think, really kind of threw a wrench in the whole thing. Because these movies were supposed to be sort of anchored by those leads, like the Force Awakens. The Force Awakens sort of anchored by Han. The Last Jedi anchored by Mark Hamill, and this one was supposed to be anchored by Carrie Fisher. And it's about Rey's relationship with each one of them, and Kylo Ren confronting his relationship with each one of them. The last one we didn't, and it was going to be really interesting because he killed Han Solo, he hates Luke Skywalker, but like all throughout the movies, like he's very hesitant about his mother.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's, you kind of see like that's where the conflict is probably coming
from. Just like all basement dwelling fanboys.
Yeah. So that's
with their unique collectibles and their cosplay.
So they're probably in a horrible position anyway,
Yeah.
And I do feel for J.J. Abrams because like he probably really had to play it safe, because didn't they like finish shooting like March?
Something like that, and they fast tracked the movie, and that's the other thing is I don't know why they couldn't have delayed it a little bit, just given it some more time. But
that's just how studios do things now, man. Like you got to.
But develop the
thing in like a year's
time.
There's
one studio now.
I know. What are they so worried about?
They have no competition. What are they worried about? Cats? I mean, come on. But I think that, yeah, I mean, I could spend 3 hours crapping on Rise of Skywalker, and mostly because, again, if I watch it again, I'll probably have different feelings. There's stuff in it that works. Okay, let's be a little positive. Some things that work, in my opinion. All the scenes with Luke on Ahch-To, they work. And I can't stand the fanboys that are all like, see, JJ's sticking it to Rian Johnson in the way that handle, because Luke catches the lightsaber and says, there's no way to treat a weapon. And it's shut up. Sorry. You clearly did not watch Last Jedi. And that the whole thing is, one, Mark is clearly being very cheeky when he does that. And the other is that reveals that Luke learned lessons.
Yeah, he's enlightened now.
He's enlightened. He learned a lesson at the end of Last Jedi. At the one, he that's the whole point of Last Jedi is he ends with him realizing that his behavior and all that, and that whole movie is not the way it's supposed to be. And then getting to see him raise the X-wing is kind of cool. Yeah, that was kind of cool.
They played Yoda's music. I wasn't cool with that. But
he's sort of stepped into that role, right? And it's that scene. It's a callback to that scene where he failed. Yeah. There he is. He finally is kind of that's poetic George Lucas stuff, and I'm on board. Though, how long did that X-wing sit underwater? And I guess spacecraft in Star Wars they suffer no consequences.
Well, you know how J.J. Abrams, he likes to put spaceships underwater. That's just.
Well, but he
probably used to be a kid. When he was a kid, he liked to take his spaceships in the bath with him. That's probably why they're always underwater. The Enterprise is underwater, and
Well, Millennium Falcon was never underwater.
Well, the X-wing was.
Well, no, because Luke
those Star Destroyers were.
But the X-wing was underwater from Rian Johnson. Come on.
Okay, whatever. I'm just.
He abandoned it,
and
the point I'm trying to get at is it comes out of the water and it's immediately flyable. Cars don't do that.
The call sign is still active. Red 5.
That's
because they call her Red 5.
Yeah.
Cool.
But that worked. I thought that was good. Everything with Luke was good. I love Luke Skywalker.
The last shot of him and Leia is kind of, I don't know. I just think Mormon.
Okay.
It looked like something out of a Sunday school picture Bible thing.
Good. I liked Leia's lightsaber. That was kind of cool.
Yeah,
that she got to have a lightsaber.
And I actually did. And I know some people were kind of creeped out by it, but the scene where you saw young Luke and young Leia training, I thought that was kind of cool. I thought it was cool, probably because it was so dark.
That worked. I like that. Pretty much. Oh, Ben Solo, great. I wish we could have spent more time with him.
Yeah, Adam Driver's great. He's always great. So good. He's great in all three of these films, even in this one. And what's given to him, there's not much, but he does what he can, and he does really well.
Kylo Ren's reconstructed Kintsugi helmet is cool.
Yeah, I like it too.
With the cracks on it, even though they make a big deal of him reconstructing the helmet, then it doesn't really mean anything. But he did.
I did think it was really cool that the Sith chimp was putting.
The Sith chimp is cool.
That was really sweet.
Okay, everybody on the internet is going nuts over Baba Frik or whatever his name is.
Babu Frik. Yeah, everyone got Babu Frik fever up in here.
I don't get it.
I got the Baby Yoda fever still, but
yeah. Okay, so
but we can't say. Oh, we can agree on this, though, right? Dio, best Star Wars name in the entire franchise, if you ask me.
Also, why is Dio in the movie?
I don't know.
What is the point of Dio?
He has the missing piece of the map, right? He knows where.
Oh, just like R2 did in Force Awakens?
There was some kind of map. This thing is such a blur. I don't remember anything. I remember a dagger had a compass in it, and it lined up with the Death Star, and it's
3PO learned the power of friendship. I mean, come on. Okay, one thing I do have to say, and then we'll move on to
say good
better.
Things, so we keep going back to bad things.
It's so much bad. Okay, it was nice seeing Harrison Ford again.
Yeah, that was cool.
Even though that scene should have been Anakin Skywalker.
What would he be wearing, though?
It'd just be Hayden Christensen, man.
Yeah, but what is he wearing?
I know Keelan. I know Keelan, friend of the show. Keelan, been in a long time. One of my best friends. He would have groaned deeply to see Hayden Christensen on there. But you know what? It had the potential to actually make the prequels better, right? To be like, hey kid, you've been looking. That's another thing. He's been chasing Vader his whole life. He is at the spot where Vader died. And he is now having a conflict of emotions, which is what Vader had in the spot where he's standing. So Anakin Skywalker's Force Ghost popping up and being like, hey kid, you've been chasing me all along, and now you fully understand where I'm at and where I was, and now guess what? You have the chance to do. You wanted to be better than me, then go stop this.
I think that
right?
was supposed to happen. Like, I think Hayden Christensen. I don't know where I'm getting this information. I don't know, but I feel like there was plans for Hayden Christensen to show up, and that would have been pretty cool. I mean, I'd be on board with that.
Listen. I would give me that movie. I will put out a special edition of that thing in a few years, like fix some stuff.
But I did appreciate hearing, I'm forgetting everyone's name.
Ahsoka Tano.
Hearing
Mace Windu, Qui-Gon.
Yeah, and Freddie Prinze Jr. That was cool.
Really nice to have actually seen them on screen. So
well, the cartoons. You can't really. Maybe you could do like a live action representation. People would be kind of freaked out by it, probably. I don't know.
But it's okay when they do it for Carrie Fisher. A live action representation of Carrie Fisher.
That's just sorry. It's kind of ghoulish. It's weird.
Okay, so Rise of Skywalker, not good. And not good because of just blown potential. Like and this is the thing is like I've realized in the years, JP, that my criticisms of the prequels has largely been around that those movies are not the movies I would have made. And so I had to come to peace with the fact that they're still flawed, and they're flawed they're flawed for their own reasons within their own making, but I can't judge them against something that only exists in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, I have to learn to appreciate them for what they are and how they're presented. And like,
yeah. I mean, if there's one thing I've learned in the past year is that sometimes there's more to a work of art than its quality.
Right. And so I'm trying to remember where I was going with that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to remember why I was brought up the prequels, because like I've just learned to appreciate them for what they are and to not. Oh, that's what I was gonna say is that, like, I can watch the prequels and I can say, like, George Lucas should never be allowed to direct children.
Probably.
George Lucas probably shouldn't let his kids cameo in movies. Jar Jar Binks,
other people's kids.
Right. And it's like, I mean, and these are things that are clear that if you understand how the original trilogy was made, they were made because there were people surrounding George Lucas that would be like, you just can't do that. Like there are people who are tempering his indulgences. The problem with the prequels is that they allow George Lucas to completely indulge himself. And so like that's the problem with it, is that those are movies that would have benefited from just some restraint on a few things. Like, George, maybe it'd be better if we just like cast a bunch of people dressed as clone troopers instead of all CGI, things like that. And again, maybe George Lucas shouldn't have directed those movies, but the idea and the story they're telling and the things that are in there, they're not bad. Yeah. They're just not executed as strongly as they could be. Mm-hmm. My feeling about Rise of Skywalker is that it's a bad idea poorly executed.
Right.
Like, it's flawed from the get-go. And that, again, like watching it, it feels like this was the draft of a script, not the final thing being filmed.
Well, there's just not a whole lot of story. Like, it's just plot. It's just this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, right. This happens, this happens. From the ground up, it's already you've already lost.
Well, but that isn't J.J. Abrams' thing. He's just a plot writer, not really a story writer.
I don't know.
I mean, and this is the thing, is we're talking about the guy who did Star Trek 2009, a movie I love.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He is one of the best casting. He is one of the best he can assemble a great cast. He's got a great eye for casting.
Yeah, it's like I said, he's made some great characters.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like he doesn't have confidence in them, Like,
right.
He doesn't.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that it took someone like Rian Johnson to really like make the characters J.J. Abrams created, into something.
Yeah. Like I said, you would have had a great, and people would have loved to see all these characters together and the Millennium Falcon just going on an adventure together. Like,
mm-hmm.
Even throw Kylo Ren in there so people can be like, what's he doing in here?
Actually, do you think one thing that might have been, if there is a flaw to Last Jedi, it would have been letting Kylo Ren become a villain at the end. It would have been kind of cool if he had turned. But, or I should say flaw, but But at the same time, it's also kind of cool to see that as the mirroring of what, the invert of what we've seen in Star Wars, which is, this redemptive arc, and that the movie ends with him doubling down on being a villain, and he should be the main villain. And the last movie should have just been Rey and him having at it, and then she could have healed him, and then,
Yeah,
and so there would be no need for Palpatine.
totally.
But
It's like
anyway,
I said, there's no confidence. There's no.
yeah.
They played it safe. Who's our tried and true villain? Palpatine. you know.
But even he's not like, but really the tried and true villain of Star Wars is Darth Vader.
Yeah, but you can't bring him back.
Well, in the concept art, there was Darth Vader's Force Ghost, so that was a cool idea. The idea that like the dark manifestation of Vader could exist after death. That's kind of cool.
Maybe.
So, all right.
Well, yeah. I mean, and it's interesting you bring up the prequels because I've been thinking about them a lot too. And I don't know if it's because of this movie or anything, but I've actually been listening to a podcast. Well, there's this really great podcast called the Blank Check Podcast, and it's a film critic and a comedian / actor. The film critic is David Sims from The Atlantic, film critic for The Atlantic, and the actor is Griffin Newman, who plays Arthur on The Tick on Amazon.
Oh, nice.
And it's actually a great podcast. They go through filmographies, and they find directors who like hit it real big, and the studio gives them, what people refer to as a blank check, and they can make whatever they want. And they go through their entire filmography, and it's great. But when they first started out, it was a podcast about the Phantom Menace, and so I'm starting from the beginning. And so far, they've done like 3 2-hour-long episodes just talking about the Phantom Menace, and it's given me a lot to think about.
Yeah,
and it's kind of reminded me like I really like the design of the Phantom Menace. I hated it when I was a kid because like it just didn't look like Star Wars. I look back at it now, I'm like, it's beautiful. Like it's really nice. Like and I feel like George Lucas kind of buckled under pressure to make the prequels more like the old trilogy because you kind of see that sort of progression of design. I think he fast tracked it a little too much.
Well, the idea he did fast track it way too much. Because I mean, like the last shot of Revenge of the Sith, there's suddenly like uniformed Imperials. Where they come from?
Yeah, exactly.
But like the Naboo ship's beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. I love all the Nubian stuff. Was it Nubian? I don't know.
Yeah, it's Nubian. Yeah,
that's so weird.
Well, because it doesn't make sense linguistically to say Nabooian. You'd say Nubian.
It wouldn't be the weirdest thing to say in Star Wars, that's for sure. There's a genre of music I won't mention. I don't know if that's canon anymore.
No, it's still canon.
Okay. Oh, really? Oh,
a canon of.
But no, I don't know. It's like you said, like there's more to a movie than its quality. And when you look past the quality of Star Wars and you see what George Lucas was trying to do, it's kind of amazing. You kind of see a little bit of the framework when you kind of step back and how each film was very distinctly different from the last one. But, yeah, I don't know. We need to do an episode about the prequels.
Yes, we do. Because I'm watching, because my boys are like eating, breathing, drinking, living Star Wars right now, and they're so we're revealing the movies to them in machete order.
Oh, okay. So
we've watched A New Hope, Empire, Phantom Menace, and Attack of the Clones. And Attack of the Clones is not a good movie.
Oh yeah, I think that's the one I don't like. Like I can't really look past its quality. I can't really. It's very poorly written and very poorly acted.
And the production design is just it's indulgent CGI that doesn't need to be CGI.
Yeah.
It's just not tasteful, and so it suffers for it. But at the same time, George Lucas is trying to pave new ground in terms of computer generated imagery and all this kind of stuff. But
yeah, I feel like that's the one where he's really trying to push special effects just because of how many set pieces are in it.
Yeah.
Like it's just like a gong over and over beating you over the head. Like, oh, make it a stop.
Yeah. You realize that after because you sort of feel like the Geonosis bit with like the execution, like, oh, that's the climax of the film. Oh no, we've got an entire battle now to watch. Yeah. And then we've got Yoda fighting with Dooku, which is a terrible name. All right, so we talked about prequel. We should do an episode on the prequels. Let's talk about the one really good Star Wars thing that's out there right now. Or do you not have time?
I don't have time. Yeah.
We'll just say Mandalorian's very good.
The Mandalorian is great. I've got Baby Yoda fever. I don't know about you.
He's very cute.
That Baby Yoda is taking the nation by storm.
Yep.
Babu Frik doesn't stand a chance. Like, no.
Frick, just ridiculous.
I know I love it. I think it's great. I think it's. I mean, we've kind of already known. People have been sort of watching, the Clone Wars and Rebels, that Star Wars works really well on television.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we have our first live action TV show, like, it's just, proven further. It probably belongs on TV at this point. I mean, I still want to see Rian Johnson's trilogy if it's still being made. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But I would love to see them really go for it on TV, And I think they are. They've got the Mandalorian is the second season's already like on its way. Like they started shooting it while it was still being released.
fall 2020.
Yeah, and the Obi-Wan series is going to come out, and that's going to be cool. I'm looking
Ewan
forward to
McGregor
that.
as Obi-Wan Kenobi is always something special.
Yeah, and big quick side note, Hot Toys, Sideshow Collectibles.
Yeah.
They released an Obi-Wan figure.
It's cool. I've seen it.
You know what I'm talking about? The Obi-Wan that's like in between the prequels and the original trilogy. Super cool. He's like carrying around his armor as like a backpack, and like he has like desert wear stuff. And the new Clone Wars season's coming out. I think the Andor Cassian Andor
Cassian
show.
Andor.
The
Got a
Cassian
show
Andor
for him
is
coming
happening.
out.
Yeah, so like I think Star Wars
What's your figure? K2SO. That's cool.
Yeah, I think Star Wars is going to find new life on TV, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see, because you're going to see a lot of different people's takes on it, and I think that they're gonna do what they should have been doing all along, which is open up the galaxy. Just go at every corner of it and see what we. Well,
and I would love it if they were to sort of give someone like Dave Filoni some like a lot of oversight in Star Wars, because he gets it.
Totally.
Or like Jon Favreau, who's done a really great job with Mandalorian, where he knows how to incorporate fan service that's not pandering.
Right.
Like even like he did a whole episode on Tatooine, and it actually, like, even though it was like totally fan service, he had to wrench Tatooine in it. It was done in such a way that was like, it was cool. Like, it said something, right? The cantina is now populated by droids, and gives you a sense of what the state of that planet is after the fall of the Empire. That's cool.
And also, I also want to point out, Mandalorian takes place during the what's referred to as the New Republic era.
Yeah, 5 years after the end of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, my favorite era. Always been my favorite era, because it's really like it's just like a struggle for power on both sides, kind of. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't know. I think it's just like a really cool frontier in the narrative that'd be really awesome to explore.
Dirty stormtroopers.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I love that idea.
Mm-hmm.
And like Force users is kind of popping up somewhere, like Baby Yoda. But
my theory here, I have two theories about Baby Yoda, and then we can end.
All right.
My first theory is that he's a clone of Yoda. Yeah. Because watching Clone Wars the other day, Yoda goes to Kamino to gather the Sith troops, or the clone troops. And they make a point of saying that they do artificial aging.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, is it possible that they did clone Yoda? And the reason I'm saying Kamino is because the doctor who has the baby in the thing, he has a Kamino symbol on the sleeve of his jacket.
Oh, really? So he's probably a cloner.
He's a cloner, or has some kind of involvement with the cloners, working for Darth Werner Herzog. Should be a
it's so great. He's so great.
But oh man, what's his name? He's playing Moff Gideon. That dude's cool too.
Yeah, he played. I forgot his name, but he played Gus on Breaking Bad, and he is terrific.
The other thing about Baby Yoda is, I think the brat is faking. He's not really like an infant.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Like how Yoda on Dagobah
Okay.
comes across as like this idiot to try to just,
Interesting.
I'm waiting for the reveal that he's actually been like coherent the whole time and has actually just been pretending to be a baby.
It's Gilbert Gottfried. It's
Oh God, that'd be amazing.
Do you remember that time I killed the Mudhorn for you? You've never been very grateful for it. We're a
Do
clan
you
of
remember
two.
when I force choked Kara?
Oh, yeah. It's The Mandalorian is wonderful, and I'm looking forward to the second season. I might just
Yeah,
rewatch it. I don't know.
you should.
Yeah. All right, man. All right.
Okay.
So we've
All
said
right.
all we can say at this point. Maybe next week we'll talk about. We'll have Matt here. We can talk about the Mandalorian.
Yeah,
And if we are here next week, I don't know.
I'm open to it.
Cross your fingers, folks.
I want to be back.
Yeah, we want to be back. We're trying. We're trying. We're just adjusting to new schedules and stuff. Don't worry, we haven't had like a breakup or anything. Not or whatever. There's no Yoko factor.
Right, and we're not really we're not really at that state of like the White Album. I mean, we kind of are, where we're like recording episodes, but not all together.
Yeah,
A couple of us on one episode, a couple of others on another. But I guess we are kind of in a White Album phase. Never mind, I take that back.
Yeah. All right. So I want to thank you, Father Chuck, for all of your opinions and everything that you've provided for us today.
Welcome.
And I want to thank you, viewer and listener, for watching and listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, review, rate us, and thank you for listening. And we'll see you again next time. Have a wonderful week. Good journey.